Good evening. I'd like to call this evening's meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission in Sebastian, Florida, August 3rd, 2023 to order, please. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Ms. Matthews?
Present.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Here.
Mr. Carter?
Present.
Ms. LaRusso?
Here.
Mr. Haddix?
Here.
Ms. Battles?
Here.
Ms. Kinchin?
Here.
Ms. Giese?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to announce this evening that our newest alternate member, Mr. Christopher Roberts, is unable to attend this evening's meeting and has an official excused absence. And we also are welcoming our new city attorney. We're really happy to have her with us, Jennifer Cockcroft.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next order of business is approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Members have all had a chance to review the minutes. If there are any additions or corrections, please bring them forth. If not, we will entertain a motion to accept them as submitted.
I move to accept them as submitted. I move to accept.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Ms. Cottenberg and Ms. Giese, I apologize, but I think you are acting as an alternate tonight, so I don't
That's
think you
right.
can make a motion. I
I'm sorry.
apologize.
She can't make a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes from June 15th, 2023, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, I am now going to open a hearing of the P&Z Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think I do that with my gavel. Thank you. Would you like me to read that into the record?
Sure, it's not an ordinance title, but we can read this in. This is the public hearing. This is a recommendation to City Council. It's for a conceptual plan unit development for River Oaks Preserve. 85 Sebastian LLC is the applicant. This is for a parcel that is 146.5 acres. There are 352 single-family units, 2.4 units per acre proposed. This is located south of Landfair and Lighthouse Avenues, north of County Road 510 and Citrus Hideaway Subdivision. It is PUDR, Plan Unit Development Residential Zoning Designation, and the future land use designation is very low density residential.
Thank you. Call for a staff presentation, please.
No, this will be the applicant presents first.
Pardon me?
The applicant presents first, Madam Chairman.
Okay, that isn't what it says here, but that's okay. Applicant presentation, please.
Good evening. Good evening, Commission and Chair.
My name's Emily O'Mackey, and I'm with the firm of 2GHO down in Jupiter, Florida. And we are excited to bring you this project. I see that it's up on the screen now. Great. The project's called River Oaks Preserve. And we will be looking forward to going on to the City Commission. As Dory mentioned, it is a PUD conceptual development plan for 146 acres, 352 detached single-family units at a density of 2.4 units per acre. The land use designation is very low residential. The zoning, planned unit development, PUD-R, which was established back in 2004. The maximum density is 3 units per acre. So, talking about the public benefit as just a start, we are looking to develop an environmentally sensitive project with a goal to be sustainable now and over time. We're very excited. We think that this land is a beautiful piece of land. The wetlands in there, it's overgrown, yes, but it's beautiful to work with. And we wanted to let you know that the developer, the Modica family, has owned this land for over 15 years and feels the time is now to do something with it. They have developed St. George's Medical University in Granada. They did a mixed-use restaurant development in Jupiter. They're on pre-development for another waterfront property in Jupiter. And they are also have approved site plans for waterfront mixed-use project in sort of near Stewart with 337 apartments, 2 marinas, and 60,000 square feet of commercial. And there are various other real estate endeavors, including large-scale industrial developments and apartment complexes over on the west coast of Florida. So this land, it is the goal of the developer, of the design team, to bring a really quality project and to celebrate that land, that special land with the water going through it. To that end, we are offering public trails through and around the wetland areas. We have provided wider than required buffers on the north and some of the west side. We are also providing, at the request of the city, an extension of Shakespeare along this property's eastern side. We're giving the right-of-way and building a two-way road up to our entrance and a one-way road between our entrance north up to the end of the property. And there is additional open space. We're really celebrating the wetland and making that the reason to live there is to be able to walk on these trails to enjoy the outdoors. And we are also part of that sustainability going all native on our plant material. And currently it's full of exotics, but this is what this is the aerial from 1984, and it was in heavy citrus production. But you can also see the south prong of the St. Sebastian River is over on our west side. And you can see that there was citrus surrounding all sides of this at that time too. So today, it is totally vegetated, but not necessarily with anything we want other than the northeast corner, the whole strip of land along Lighthouse Avenue, and some in the river area. This is going to be a restoration project, including a lot of the wetland areas will need total restoration. We are looking at this property in 2 different types of single-family units. The lower part we're calling cluster housing, and you can see sort of those U-shaped groups, and we'll go into more detail on that. And those are cluster housings around a courtyard, and they have an amenity center. And the other is more your traditional single-family lots, which they also have amenity centers and amenities. So we're looking at it as phase 1 and phase 2. And please note that phase 1, and this is subject to change as we go through the development and the construction drawings for this, but this general intent to build the cluster housing along with the extension of Shakespeare. To look a little more detail at the plan, there are two entries. One on the south side from 510, and the other from the east side, which would be that future expansion of Shakespeare. And once you get in there, you come into the cluster housing area. But the two circles are gatehouses. So the traditional single family will be gated with two entrances into it. And you can see from the stars all the different amenities that are part of it. Am I doing that?
No, sorry, we're having technical difficulties.
Okay. And this is a graphic exhibit about the trails. So the green trails are the public trails, and the red ones are the private trails. So more inward in the property are the private trails. The public trails go all along the wetland, and you can see the grayed out area is the wetland. The wetland designation plus the traditional 25-foot buffer plus the city of Sebastian another 25. So there's a 50-foot buffer on that wetland. The trails will be in the upper 25 feet. So really protecting the wetlands and yet being able to enjoy them. So now let's get on to cluster housing, because what does that mean? Cluster housing means a cluster of 4 or more dwelling units around a central common space sharing site amenities such as parking and landscaping in a coherent site design located either on a single lot or individually platted lots. We are proposing that these be platted lots, that they could be for sale as a single-family lot. It's just that they would be around a courtyard, and you can see how they would configure. But what this does in this configuring is, let's go into it a little more here. We have 2 different types of courtyard designs. One has 9 units, and the other has 7. And looking at this is the Cluster House A cluster group, and you can see there are 3 different unit types, 3 different houses, different sizes. You can tell by the colors. And in the middle is a courtyard with a planting area. This is designed to bring people together. This is a social interacting place. You will notice that the driveways, these all have 2-car garages. The driveways are only 10 feet long. It is not meant to park a car. You go into your garage. This courtyard is meant for to interact with your community. So it's a completely different concept, turning outward and taking away from the car. These lots are always, they're 60 feet deep. They've got 10-foot front, 15-foot back, 7.5-foot sides. And you can see because of the different unit types, we have different widths of lots, going between 54 to 90 feet. And this is the B cluster group. It only has 2 different unit types. Once again, same kind of courtyard with extra parking. And the center landscape is meant to be an identifying landscape that could change. We'd hope to have several different types of trees or palms in them so that you actually identify your cluster by what's in that central planting. But once again, this is a concept for what we're looking to do. The architect has visualized this in a 3D modeling, looking at what type of houses that we would build here, to give you a flavor of it. And this cluster housing, initially at least, will be for rental. That's what the developer is looking to do. These would be rental units, but able to be sold because we are platting them. Taking a closer look at the traditional single family, you can see how it is all in the upper northern part of it. You can see the broader um, the broader buffers. And on the northeast side is that preserve area. There's some beautiful upland vegetation in that area that we are preserving and buffering. And you can see the two gatehouses are circled, the pool area, we have pickleball, and access out to a dock. There are two types of single-family units. They're both 130 feet long. They are 55 feet wide or 70 feet wide. So two different varieties. They both have 25-foot front setbacks, 25-foot rear setbacks, 7.5-foot sides. So that's a traditional, you can put two cars in before they go in the garage and it's on your property. So, in conclusion, we are excited to bring this project forward, a project that integrates residential with the beauty of the site and integrates and provides for activity and interaction amongst residents and amongst the community as a whole. The public trails will allow us to celebrate this special piece of land, open, accessible to the public for decades to come. So that is our presentation, and will be available for questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So this is, let me start with the original River Oaks planned unit development was approved in 2004 when this property was annexed in. Our code requires to get that PUDR zoning designation, you have to also present a conceptual plan, which they did. The original plan was in 2004. So in essence, even though 2004, as we explained in our staff report, there were some permits issued for that. They did go up all the way up to land clearing, construction drawings. Economy fell apart and the project kind of died out. So this is a different plan from that original 2004 plan, and as such, our land development code states that we have to process it the same way as the original. So in essence, this is a revision from that original 2004. We included in our staff report some of the items that also had to be considered for the rezoning. They're not rezoning the property, we're not zoning any new designation on the property, but we included in there that, say this was the original PUD conceptual plan, that the rezoning consideration would have still been met and still was in compliance with the comp plan. So some of the items in your staff report is to show you that this plan would still meet the rezoning intentions too, to get that PUDR consideration. PUD, how is that different from some of our other subdivisions? And we kind of put it as straight zoning, a straight zoning subdivision, and then there's what we call the PUD, the planned unit development. Straight zoning is when you will designate a zoning district, RS10, RS20, that zoning district will regulate, it'll tell you what the minimum lot size has to be, it establishes your setbacks, it lets you know how much building coverage you have to have, and how much maximum impervious. So what a PUD does, it allows to be creative with your subdivision design, and you can negotiate some items. There are some items the PUD zoning, our zoning still requires you. There's a minimum open space you have. There's a 50% open space requirement for the whole PUD. So there are some regulations that you still have to follow, but it does allow you to negotiate some of your other items, such as your lot sizes and your setbacks and some of the amenities that you may want to put in there. Still have to keep to road widths and things like that, but there are negotiable items in a planned unit development. But again, in exchange for that, you offer some additional or more than minimum public benefits or amenities. And this conceptual plan gets brought before you and the city council so that everybody's on board of this design and what they are proposing before they go into some really detailed, the next step of subdivision construction with your preliminary plat. And so that's what's before you tonight. With the PUD, we have this conceptual plan. You will look at it, make a recommendation to city council. It'll go to city council, and they will also review it, decide if they want to continue and move forward with the conceptual plan and the subdivision. As we go through this process, you may have some additional conditions that you would like added that you'll recommend to City Council, and they may also have some conditions that they will add if they choose to approve the subdivision. After that comes the preliminary plat, and again, that's where there's a little bit more, we've got much more designing, the move forward with the design. We'll have more of a complete drainage plan. We'll have more detailed surveys on those trees and what can be preserved. Traffic, we're going to have a much more fuller traffic analysis to know exactly detail on how much traffic is going to be added to the roads. After that, again, the preliminary plat comes back before you to do a recommendation to City Council. City Council makes that final decision on the preliminary plat. That's the last time you're going to see necessarily that plan, this board. Our next step is construction drawings. Now we've got the details totally on the subdivision, how much subbase under the road, the size of the pipes of that drainage. That gets reviewed by staff and approved by the city engineer, and their final step would be their final platting. To put it in perspective, I want to compare it to another PUD. The last one that we did was Spirit of Sebastian. Spirit of Sebastian in 2018 got their PUD R designation and their conceptual plan was approved. 2 months ago, they did their final plat to begin so that they can bring their first houses to be built. So it isn't something that within a year we're going to see houses being built on this property. There's still a lot of planning and details. It takes about 4.5 years, and we'll go through that process. It's time-wise and different how your engineer works and how it's presented. So I don't want to say it's going to take that long for sure. It could be a little earlier, but it's not anything that right away you will see construction in the next year. There's still a lot of details and planning that has to do. So that is what I wanted to also let you know then. With what we presented in your packet was, along with our staff report, the justification statement had a lot from the applicant, had a lot of information. Hopefully you've read that all. It kind of laid out what their justification is for some of their considerations on their setbacks and what additional amenities they're going to be giving with the subdivision. Kind of their timeline. They've kind of given you some school information. But we also wanted to include with you, as some of the other information in the packet, we did give you the initial traffic analysis, traffic statement. It wasn't a full analysis. It was the conceptual drainage plan. You saw that some of the trees that are going to be preserved. That was not a complete tree survey, as some of the areas were hard to get into at this point. So we gave you a lot of information to help you determine if this is a subdivision that's in compliance with our comprehensive plan and something that you would want to proceed forward with the subdivision with that. Let me get through this. At this point, we'd like to enter the staff report into the record. There are a few things that we'd like to go over more detailed. Again, I said the justification statement we thought was a thorough and a good introduction to the subdivision and what they're proposing. Let's go over a few of the things that they are proposing. I wanted to because I know it is a concern. Not a concern, but something that based on the policies in our comprehensive plan regarding interconnectivity and some of our local roads connecting to some of our major roads, we did require on that east side some dedication for the Shakespeare extension. And also then the piece of property that's next to this property, when they annexed in, also when they build, will be required to dedicate some property for the city for the Shakespeare extension. But I wanted to kind of show you on the intent of what we will see with this subdivision and what may happen and what we presume would happen in the future when the adjacent property comes in for development. Get Joseph to put this on. Here we go. So just to, let me see if I can get this without the glare. And I apologize. So this is up here, this is the north part coming off of, I believe, Periwinkle. This is two-way. This will always be two-way. It's already established as a 50-foot right-of-way. This extension of Shakespeare is the one-way area, comes down to Landfair. This will always remain a one-way, and the traffic goes from north to south. There is no way or possibility to get enough dedication to make that a two-way street. So we have this from here. This is the adjacent subdivision that was annexed in that in the future will, it was a requirement of their annexation to dedicate 25 feet from us. But from 510 up to here, River Oaks will be dedicating from about here, the 50 feet for their two-way, and this will be two-way with their phase one. What we are proposing as with their phase one also is that they will extend this with the 25 feet that they are giving us for a one-way right-of-way. The 25 feet, a one-way street. To put the pavement in, we don't want to do any final design in terms of curb and gutter, or we'll certainly work out a drainage plan with the city engineer, but this will be one way, and it'll also allow access from up in this area to get to the public trails. So for a while, this will all be just a one-way road. For up here, you won't be able to get back into Sebastian Highlands. It'll be two-way to the gate, to the entrance gate for River Oaks. But it does allow the residents up in this area to get down to 510 instead of having to get back over to Barber Street or to get to Powerline or Schuman Drive if they were heading south to Vero. And this will remain one way until this subdivision, this property comes in for some development. So that's the proposal with River Oaks. And then, of course, once this we would get the rest of the two-way, and it would be two-way up to, and I apologize, up to Landfair there. At that time. So I wanted to show you what the Shakespeare, what the proposal was for that street, for the people in our Okay, what I wanted to just kind of go over again in our staff report, there are the things that the applicant is requesting to kind of be negotiated to consider is, I just wanted to make it part of the record, the average lot widths, the minimum yard setbacks, the cluster unit lot dimensions and lot coverage. They are requesting to only have a one-sided bike and sidewalk on the Shakespeare Street instead of two on either side, and to include the garage. Currently, our code says you don't get parking credit in your garage. You have to have those two parking spaces in your driveway, but they're requesting with the cluster housing that we credit them with, give them parking credits in their garage, because our parking code requires two parking spaces for each residential unit, that would be in the garage and not in the driveway. And then, of course, Emily went over the, what their public benefit, the additional that they're giving, the additional right-of-way for the Shakespeare. They're also giving over 2 acres to FDOT for the widening project. They have the wetland preservation and the trails, and the lower density. If you looked at the survey, you'll notice that there are a lot of easements and proper canals that are owned by the Sebastian River Improvement District. Conceptually, they have, that organization has said that they're okay with this, but there's a lot of things that still have to be worked out. We did get that letter of agreement. I put that in your packet so you can see there are a lot of other steps. That's the steps that we're talking about after a conceptual PUD of things that have to get worked on with the engineer and the different groups and organizations in your county utilities. So that we wanted to include that into the your packet so that you could see that conceptually Sebastian River Improvement District is okay moving forward with this project as long as they meet the conditions in that letter. But working with them, if for some reason there is a substantial change to this conceptual plan, if it gets approved by City Council, and working with them, if it's substantial, the code does require, and we made that a condition of approval, that it would have to come back before you. If there's a different density change or the road layout is different enough, we will bring that back before you. There's always room for little minor modifications to get that stormwater in, but if it's substantial, we will bring that back before you. The initial traffic statement, we don't need to go into a lot of details of that, but I thought the important item from that statement is that the level of service for County Road 510 right now is a level C. With this project and with the widening of it, it will remain at level C. So this project isn't going to be adding a lot of extra traffic onto that road. Once the widening is done, that is going to drop that level down. It'll still be a level C, which is acceptable in our level of service and in the counties also. We went over the Shakespeare. Again, by the time we get to the preliminary plat, we'll have more detailed tree surveys. There are definitely some other specimen protected trees on that property that we feel can be saved, but we'll get that once we get to that preliminary plat, and they have a little bit more grubbing into that property to do some additional surveying. There was, the existing wetland map, I don't know if you remember on Emily's, plan, up in the northeast corner, there were some areas where the wetland buffer areas went, into a few of the, into the single-family lots. We'll work with them on negotiating that. But from that plan, I think you also saw that the wetland buffer areas, because of the wider buffers that we're requiring, 50 feet from the established wetlands that St. John's has already been to the property and established, some of those buffer areas are going very close to the single-family lot lines. And we have found in a couple of our other subdivisions and PUDs that have conservation easements in the people's property or that are abutting, and not maybe intentionally, but eventually they get kind of cleared out and they become a fire pit area, or the kids' playgrounds and swings get put into those areas. So as a condition of approval, we would like those areas that are abutting to those lots, that some sort of conservation split rail fence is put on those buffer lines to establish that, hey, this is a buffer area, you know, not an area that can be encroached in for some accessory residential activities. And that is one of our conditions of approval. With regards to the cluster units, to make sure that we were all on the right track, and before planning those out and laying them out, they had the fire marshal review that, and the radiuses inside those cluster units do meet fire accessibility codes. So that was one of the first things they requested our fire marshal to look into, so that they did have that verified before they started laying out the design of and the layout of those cluster homes. With that, we'd like to note for the record that we, as staff, we feel that the project is in compliance and meets all the, is consistent with the comprehensive plan, our land development code, and code of ordinances. And again, I'm just going to read in for the record. We recommend that you forward a favorable recommendation to City Council, and with the following conditions. In areas where a residential property line abuts a wetland buffer area, that a 3 or 4 foot high fence would be required to establish the specific boundary to prevent encroachment of accessory residential activities. Wetland buffer areas, notably in the northwest corner, that encroach into the residential lots will be mitigated. Possibly alternative ground covers for those trails through those wetland buffer areas to be considered versus gravel. And that construction of the north 720 linear feet of the one-way Shakespeare Street shall occur in phase 1, with the final design approved by city engineer. And if the final drainage plan, after working with the Sebastian River Improvement District, modifies the conceptual design considerably, the conceptual plan will need to be reconsidered by the PZ Commission and City Council. And we're available for questions too, if you have, after your deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. The next part of our hearing will allow public input, and I must tell you that we are delighted to see so many members of the public here, because we always want to hear what the public has to say. If I may, before I start, we generally have we have a ruling that says each person is allowed to speak for not more than 5 minutes. If we were to have 100 people here, we wouldn't be able to let everybody speak for 5 minutes. Could I see a show of hands for how many people do wish to speak? Okay, 5 minutes will be no problem. When you come up to speak, please speak clearly into the microphone. Say and spell your name so that our secretary can keep this for the record, because this is a meeting and we do keep records. Okay. Public input starts now, and I will ask any who are okay. First, let me ask you, are you in favor or opposed?
I'm both.
Okay.
I have major concerns because I live on Shakespeare Street.
All right.
And most of my neighbors, I've been on Shakespeare Street for 20 years.
Okay.
And my name is Scott Carmine, C-A-R-M-I-N-E. I'm retired law enforcement from the Indian River County Sheriff's Department. I've lived in Sebastian for 20 years. And I live on the one-way section that can't be annexed, can't be divided into two-way. I'm north of Landfair, and my concern with this development is if you put Shakespeare Street through up to 510, where this development is, we're very concerned in my neighborhood, the traffic flow, because they're going to learn once they live there, instead of go to Power Line Road to take the 510 to go in, excuse me, off of 510, they're going to come down Periwinkle Drive and cut through Shakespeare Street, which is the easiest way to get into that development. So what we would like to see is, don't open up Shakespeare Street all the way through. Leave that berm there, please. They can develop the Shakespeare Street on the other side of Lighthouse. So make that just one-way street when they come out of that development, and they can go up to 510. But please don't put Shakespeare Street through. Our roads can't handle the traffic. We already have people coming down my street for 20 years, the opposite, the wrong way. And everyone in my neighborhood will totally agree that the traffic flow will just be congested on our roads, and our roads cannot handle it. So please take into consideration to build Shakespeare Street on the other side of the wetlands, on the berm over there. We don't need Shakespeare Street to come through. And if you lived on my street, I think you would agree. That's all we're asking. You know, you're not going to stop the growth, but you sure can, you know, appease us. We've been there way before this development is even coming. That's our concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, my name is Tony Salazar, S-A-L-A-Z-A-R. I also live on Shakespeare Street. And I'm here as a concerned citizen, the same way Scott was, but I only have 2 years in the neighborhood. Yeah, growth is great, it's gonna happen. But one thing I learned down here in Florida, it is a different world. I'm driving. Shakespeare Street is a one-way street. It's a narrow street. When I first got here, some of our neighbors, which we're all getting older, our houses are getting older, roofs, lawn care, septics, and I first got here and somebody's getting their grass cut. The truck and the trailer are parked right on the edge of the road, which gives us about 3 feet to get a bicycle through from the mailboxes. You either sit and wait, or you learn to drive around the opposite way, put on your flashers and come down the road slowly for the 10 or 12 houses in this area. I have a concern about that because we do have a lot of bikers, walkers, golf carts going the wrong way, which still, coming off of Periwinkle, around this, if you've been there, it's a blind curve. It may be a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, but they take this thing 40 miles an hour. And God forbid, one of these days, when you guys are long gone, somebody's gonna get hurt there, and we just don't want that to happen. I don't wanna see it to happen. As again, the road's narrow, the lighting, and this whole strip of approximately an average of 5 city blocks, there's one street light in the middle, and the rest is pitch black. So when you get, I know you made the comment of there won't be a lot of extra traffic on 510 when this thing comes in, but when 300 to 400 houses come in, there's gonna be extra traffic. And if you've seen 510, when it's backed up all the way down there, you know they're coming the opposite way. I don't care the size of the truck, the weight of the truck. If the bachelor's on, they're taking a road to get home and don't care what they're gonna see. I understand that, but you know, we're trying to fight that. The public safety, that. Also, with the traffic coming through, we love moving here from Illinois because we can walk and exercise every day. We walk our dog around Landfair to some of these other streets. There's no sidewalks in that area, none. And the water that sits, I noticed on Landfair and some of the other ones, on a heavy rain, it's up into the roads. When we start getting traffic and there's 2 cars coming, they're driving in people's yards and it's gonna tear up the yard. That's just a concern I have with that. I didn't know a question about ocean breeze comes off of Periwinkle by the lake there. And then it turns into a one-way. Is that gonna be opened up two-way also? I don't know about that.
No.
It's not. So there's gonna be another one-way that they're gonna run into, turn left on Landfair to come hit Shakespeare and over.
It's not part of this
Okay,
program.
I just, because I know people that are gonna live on that street are gonna see traffic going that way because they think nobody's watching, and there's no lights on those streets. That's gonna be another safety concern, I believe. And I think, like I said, everything else is pretty much sustainable. People do go the wrong way. Scott said it. We've called water companies, garbage companies. We take the numbers off and they don't care. We're sitting in our road and we're waving like this and they drive right by you. And one of our neighbors isn't here. The favorite line is, "You're going the wrong way." And they tell us, "We're going one way," you know. "Oh, it's a one way." And they tell us, "We're going one way." And I don't know how to fight that, but still, with just the little amount of traffic there that I've seen in our only 2 years here, because it's not open to the other 400 houses coming in. Signs don't mean nothing down here to people, and like I said, when you want to, it blows my mind down here, because when you want to stop your car, nobody parks in the driveway, nobody parks in grass. They stop in the middle of the road, they put 2 cones out, and they walk away. They just leave their vehicles there, and I just don't see when things are being done on our street that when a truck's there and it leaves you about a 3-foot piece of property, they're gonna drive into our yards, tear things up, hit things, and it's just gonna be a dangerous situation. I don't know if I used my 5 minutes or not yet, but I just wanted to state my concerns also. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name's Heather Fisher, Fisher. I also am a resident on Shakespeare, neighbors with Tony and Scott, and I won't take the whole 5 minutes, Tony, you can have some of mine.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but both of the first 2 speakers did this, and you are too. If you will direct your voice always to the microphone
Okay.
instead of turning backwards, because we can't hear you if you're not talking.
Okay, sorry, try to acknowledge people, so, okay, apologize.
Thank you.
So, again, I'm just here to again, echo the safety concern. I live on Shakespeare, at the top of Shakespeare, where it goes from 2 ways to 1 way. I was warned by the neighbors when we first moved there 7 years ago to watch out, even though it's 1 way, people go the opposite direction and you could get hit. It's true. A couple of things I just want to point out. Again, I won't go through the whole spiel, but they mentioned the cluster housing and how the courtyards are intended to bring people together and to bring the community together. Shakespeare is like that for us. We walk at night, we talk to each other, we get to know each other on that road. That road's 8 feet wide, and as they pointed out on that blind corner, I've almost been hit a couple times walking my dog. When someone comes down that road, you have to dive off the road into someone's yard because they're going faster than 30. The other day at lunch, I was walking my dog, and a car, Escalade, was coming down, and I jumped out of their way, and they had been doing, I was 6 inches from them, me and my dog, and they were doing 35, 40 miles an hour down the road. And now we're gonna have that multiplied by what? 352 homes, and then everyone that's in our neighborhood, realizing that that's accessible. Yeah, so it's a big safety concern. And we lose our community by that happening. And then again, everything Tony said, you know, in our neighborhood, because it is an 8-foot wide one-way street, when you get your septic pumped, the septic truck blocks the whole road. You know, the other trucks sit there and wait, or they go around and find another way. It blocks the entire road. No one can do anything, and it's just not going to be helpful. It's going to make it harder on us. It's going to make it harder on people getting through. It's not going to be helpful. Again, I just want to voice that I think we should keep the berm and have them create Shakespeare on the other side from 510 up. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Mindy Service, Servivis, and I don't live on Shakespeare. I live on Joy Haven, and I've been in the neighborhood for about 7 years now. And I'd like to make it clear that I do oppose the project for a couple reasons. And I think that what the other speakers have addressed, especially about talking about the value of cluster housing, this is a neighborhood. We all know each other. We walk around every night. That's my neighborhood too. It's a very quiet neighborhood. And people, children, kids on golf carts, which scares me anyway. But it's just a quiet, peaceful neighborhood. And the things that have been described as public benefits strike me as maybe not so much a benefit, but rather a possible real injury to our community. And specifically, that's a lot of density for this area. So it was my understanding that it was originally zoned very low density. So is it not zoned that? Does that need to change? And are you changing it? So that is a question I do have. Is the zoning changing?
No, and maximum is 3 units per acre. They're only coming in at 2.4, so they're not even coming in at the maximum that they could have.
For
And that we're not
very low
rezoning
density?
it. We're not rezoning this, correct. This is the zoning in place.
I didn't know, so thank you for answering that question. My next issue does relate also to Shakespeare, and I share the concerns of my broader neighborhood, that it's a very quiet, very slow, peaceful rural street. And I can't imagine that being a thoroughfare and, connecting to the rest. My third issue has to do with the emergency access road, and where it seems to be, I guess, penciled in, and the map that was sent out to residents was very difficult to read. So I appreciate having one that is better to decipher at this meeting, and I'll share that with my neighbors as well. But my question, is that an emergency access road? So does that mean that only emergency vehicles can use it, or can all 352 residents and their friends, and can they all cruise in and out?
No, the intent is if there is a need for fire trucks or emergency vehicles to get in there because of hurricane, flooding, fire, if the residents needed to use that to get out because of a fire, but it will be gated. Not gated, but it won't have access without somebody able, a barrier that would have to be opened by a fire truck.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's not, you probably won't, it'll probably grow over with grass and before it's even used, but it is there. It'll be stabilized for trucks, emergency trucks.
I know, but I mean, you think 352 residences, people fall, there are issues.
Not to be used by any vehicles except for emergency.
No, I'm talking about
yeah.
emergency vehicles. There could be 2 or 3 a day zooming through that little tiny rural residential neighborhood with little streets. You should go drive around in there. It would be important for you to see. I realize I'm going on too long.
It's not for everyday use, for emergency. It's only if the other 2 entrances were blocked. If there was a fire at either one of those gates, or 510, it's not a daily use thing. It's only if emergency, if the other 2 entrances are not available to access.
Okay, well, that is also helpful, because you need to look at those roads as well, because in the event of a true emergency, when the other gates are not accessible, those streets are really windy and little, and I can't imagine getting a fire truck in there.
No, not on a daily use.
Okay. Thank you, and I appreciate your listening. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is John Glazer, Glaser. I live on Shakespeare, 1771, and I am echoing what Heather, Scott, and Tony have all said. That's a 1-lane road. At one time, it was 20 miles an hour. Hurricanes took down the 20-mile-an-hour sign, and now everybody's doing 30, 40 miles an hour down that road. Personally, I have stopped at least 50 cars coming down that road the wrong way. And most of the time, like Scott said, they give you the line, well, I'm just going one way. You got a bunch of stupid people out there. So if you're not gonna keep that berm in place, then you need to put tire shredders on that road so they can't go down backwards the wrong way. I mean, somebody's gonna get killed down there, and we'll go to the papers and say, hey, we told the county, we told the city, but nobody listened. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anybody says they've done a study on that street, they're lying. I did studies for the county for a while when I first retired out of the Marine Corps. Okay? And I have yet to see somebody on that street looking at the roads, counting the cars, or anything else. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Francine Belangi, Frank, F-R-A-N-K. I live on Joy Haven, and I'm concerned about the animals. I live right at the edge here of this, up in the north corner. I've had wild boar on my property. I have coyotes. Where are the animals? Where are they going? Well, I don't know if they're all gone, but where are they going to go?
They're
That's
in
a
my
big piece of
neighborhood.
property.
I understand.
But it's still something to think about. You're going to put all these homes in there, and the animals just keep getting pushed away. So that's a big concern for me, especially since it's right there on my property too. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm Jim Kwiatkowski, K-W-I-A-T, K-O-W-S-K-I. Do that again. I knew that was going to happen. K-W-I-A-T, K-O-W-S-K-I. Okay, I have the same concern as all my Shakespeare neighbors here. I live on Landfair, and I'm not just concerned with the people in this new development that are going to be driving down, down Shakespeare. If you ever drive down Barber Street in the morning, the car's going down Barber Street, turning down Powerline. Powerline's a racetrack. And those people it's not going to take them long to realize that they can turn down Ocean Breeze, I guess, any one of those streets along there, and cut through and get to 510. And it's going to be a disaster. I think if they just save them some money, they don't have to pave that last little 100 feet there or whatever it is. I think that would work for us. And my other concern is construction traffic. We don't need that coming through our area, too. That can all come off of 510. And let's see. The trails that are all through there, I didn't see anything for parking on any of those anywhere to park out there for people that do want to use those trails. I was wondering if they could add something like that. That's all I have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Last call. Anyone else?
My name is Rita Richardson. I've lived in Sebastian for 22 years now. My questions have to do with the cluster homes. Are those open for discussion or input? Okay, because my math isn't the greatest, but I see 26 clusters with an average of 7 to 9 units per cluster. And the math on that is like, what, 200? Okay. And at least 1 car per unit, that's over 200 cars just in that part of this development. And you said that these will be rentals? Are they going to be seasonal rentals? Short-term rentals? And what kind of rentals are they going to generate?
I don't know if after public input, the applicant can come up to speak about that, but they will be deeded. You'll have a plat, so each individual lot can be conveyed, like a townhome, but not necessarily a townhome.
Right.
They won't be connected. But I think the intent is to rent them out at first. They could be sold, but the applicant can give you a little bit more information on the actual proposal.
But how many cars per unit would be allowed? You've got 200 units. How many cars per unit?
I believe she said that each unit will have a 2-car garage, that the driveway is short, so the cars will be required to park into the garage.
Right. So that's
And then
400.
the initial design, there was some parking up front as you
So
went
that's
into each of those
potentially
clusters.
400 cars in that cluster area.
Yes.
Okay. And where will the public park that want to come in there to use the trails?
So that was the interconnectivity of Shakespeare Street, because that was gonna have a sidewalk. That'll have a sidewalk down there that will go into their entrances, that you can access those trails. It's an 8-foot wide bike path.
Now, talking about the public, you say these are public trails?
Yes.
Where will the public that want to use the trails park?
That can be something that can be considered, but right now it's, walking or bicycle access.
Okay, and the same thing with the dog park, that's public access as well?
I'm not sure on that. No, those are the areas that would be more for the private.
So that would be permitted? Okay. So those are my questions, the parking in the cluster units and the public access. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody on Zoom?
Okay.
Do we have anybody on Zoom? Pardon me? Anybody on Zoom?
Thank you. One more.
Good evening. I'm Norm Tessier. I live over on Seashore.
I'm sorry, would you repeat your name?
Tessier, Tessier. I've been on Seashore for 20 years plus. Spent 2 years looking at lots in Sebastian, and we picked that area because of what it was. And if this goes down, it's not going to be what it was anymore. And I know that's part of life, okay? The housing is going to happen. Why it has to come north into this little quiet section that has been so peaceful. And when these people say they walk their dog, they ride their bicycle, they run, everybody just gets along. There's never any boom, 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 It's this connection, Shakespeare, into that area, and like the people say, they're gonna come up Periwinkle. They're gonna cut all up and down these streets. The kids are out there playing, families. They're there because it's quiet. If you look at the map, excluding what's going on, there's no other way out. Once you turn off into Periwinkle, into that area, there's no other way out. The only vehicles on those roads are the people that live there. And everybody knows each other, everybody gets along. It's gonna change completely. It's gonna change completely, I'm telling you. As much land is sitting there on 510, they can't make another entrance over there. You know why they can't make another entrance over there? They're gonna lose house lots. Okay? All right? So they're gonna be coming in. They're just gonna be shooting up and down, in and out. That's a lot of vehicles. I know people don't want to wait, it takes long, but still, you're sacrificing people that have lived there for 20 years plus, 30 years plus. My neighbor's been there 40 years, okay? And it's all going to change. There's room on 510 for them to make their entrances and exits. That's my,
Okay.
I'm not an engineer, but I'm telling you, you're not going to tell me there's not enough room on 510 to make some entrances and exits there without bothering everybody on the north side.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your time.
Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's raised their hand.
Do we have two more?
My name is Holm Johannesson. You want me to spell it?
Yes.
HOLM hyphen Johannesson, JOHANNESSEN.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My question is about the construction traffic. I believe I heard someone say that for phase one, it was coming off 510. What about after that? Is construction traffic also coming down Shakespeare?
So the construction drawings are the third step in a subdivision construction, but definitely would not be coming from, off of Shakespeare or, from that area, but off of 510. They are required to give us plans on where construction traffic would come from. So it'll depend on which is the first entrance that gets built on their Shakespeare, on their side of the two-way or on 512. But it definitely will not have, definitely we would not allow it to come through the Sebastian Highlands area. They have enough access off of 510 to get their construction traffic in.
You all heard that.
Hi there. My name is Kim Nielsen, Nielsen.
No, other one.
Oh, this one.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? We live up against Landfair, and I have lots of concerns. First off, yeah, I oppose this. It's sad to see that Sebastian is actually going to grow even more and more and more, because I've been here 23 years, and it's a great little town. And all I see happening is that we're just going to end up like West Palm Beach. We're just going to merge together, and we're not going to have any nice small town feeling. I also don't understand the infrastructure. Sebastian can't handle it. We keep adding all these residents in, our infrastructure isn't even here. The roads aren't ready, the stores, I can't even find anything at the grocery stores, let alone now bringing in everybody in, all these extra residents. There's just not enough infrastructure. And the other thing I have a problem with is there's trails going on now all the way around. Well, these back up to the north end, and that could be a safety concern. I don't know what kind of barriers you guys are putting up. Like, are you doing big landscaping? Are you putting big palm trees? But what I'm worried about is you could have people, even say in this development, jump the fence, if it's a small fence, and get into our neighborhood. And there could be more crime. There could be anything happening. And also, I agree with the other neighbor about wildlife. That wildlife. Right now, we have had wild boars, coyotes, deers, tons of turtles. Where, as soon as that construction phase 2 starts, it's gonna push it right into our yard. I know that. I just don't understand how we can keep plowing down all this land for new homes, and yet we can't even do anything to our own properties, but yet everybody gets to come in and just plow down all the trees and take out all the wildlife. I just think it's wrong. So the safety and the cars, just like they were saying, how are we gonna handle it? If there is a fatal accident on US 1 right now, it gridlocks everywhere, and you can't go anywhere. The streets, 510 isn't even enlarged yet. And this big development with this many people are gonna come in off of 510. 510 can't even handle it. I just can't understand why the city would even accept this, honestly. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? And no one on Zoom?
We have one member on Zoom. Mr. Burton, can you hear us? Mr. Burton, are you there? Mr. Burton, can you confirm your microphone is on? I'm not getting any audio from Mr. Burton.
Okay, I guess that's it then.
There's no one else on Zoom.
I didn't hear you.
There's nobody else on Zoom.
All right, thank you. Staff, do you have any final comments?
I think I just want to reemphasize that, again, this is the conceptual PUD. There are a lot more details that have to be designed and studied. Drainage, buffer areas, right, again, you're just seeing the buffer areas, but with the preliminary plan, we'll have more of those final landscape plans, if there is going to be a fence or how they're going to buffer their property line. This is, again, conceptual. Yes, there's going to be more of a full traffic analysis. We will do possibly, if the intent is to look into the Shakespeare extension, your recommendation to City Council and what City Council decides. It may warrant a study of the road. I can let the residents know, I will tomorrow speak to our traffic engineering department to let them know that there are some signs, one-way signs and some traffic speed signs that need to get put back up on that road, if that'll help with your current situation. But again, for this subdivision, this is just the conceptual, to get the feeling of, yes, this is we want to go forward with this subdivision. There are a lot of things that still need to be tweaked out for that preliminary plat that would come before you next.
Thank you.
And Chairman, you may want final comments from the applicant also, too.
Yeah, from the applicant, do you have final comments?
The question came up about the cluster housing rentals. The intent at this time would be to do annual leases, so it's not a come and go. Our market study has shown that this type of unit living is in demand, where you have very little care. You don't worry about your outside, and yet you're living in a single-family house. All our entrances, you know, this is more to the public, you know, are coming off of 510, which means the construction would also be there. And that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the hearing now, and we'll have deliberation among our members here. We'll start here.
Yes, I know this is at the conceptual stage. Has the applicant given any thought to price points for the leasing of the cluster homes and also for the individual home sites? And also, has there been any thought given to any affordable housing in the project?
Excuse me, the first question you had, Mr. Carter?
Was any thought given to price points as far as the leasing of the cluster homes, for example, and for the home sites and the homes?
No, not at this time. It will probably be market-driven at the time. And the answer to the second question was we were not considering workforce housing.
You were not considering?
We were not.
Okay. And then I guess my next question is, if you haven't taken any of that into account, how do you know the project's worthwhile doing?
As we've done market studies on the area.
Well, I know you have, so that's why I just wanted to get a straight answer.
What do I need to answer?
As far as pricing points that you're considering leasing those units out.
It's really premature to be even talking about that we won't even be putting anything out of the ground for 3 years or more, assuming this gets passed.
I guess I'm not going to get an answer from you, but you wouldn't be going into this development without having some expectation of getting a return on your investment.
Right, and it would be market-driven.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, we're just looking into how this development applies to our code and how it's presented, whether it complies with the comp plan and those elements.
Ms. Kesey?
Good evening, everybody. I was very thrilled to hear so many of you talk and come to the meeting. We had a lot of homework to do. We have a lot of papers here, and some of them I can't find again. But and I know these are a little bit more nitty-gritty than a conceptual hearing, but I've got to ask. You said there was an HOA. This is going to be governed by an HOA.
Yes, whatever needs to be done to make sure the property, because it is a PUD, there's common area that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. Okay, I was just asking. I live in an HOA, and I'm very happy there. Thanks in large part to Dennis down there, who has led our HOA for a couple of years. And most HOAs, it's my understanding, have a minimum rental period, just like condos do. So that might assuage some of your fears that we would get really short-term rentals in that area. The parking for trails is a thought down the road. I was interested in the two ladies who are animal lovers. I'm sorry I didn't write your names down. I too am an animal lover. And if I'm correct in what I read, Dory, we have to have a couple studies on the gopher tortoises. Right? And it has to be looked into when they're clearing the land and so forth. They have to go in and look for burrows. So that's, let me see, do I have anything else? Oh, the nice lady from Joy Haven was talking about a lot of circles, a lot of turns. They're very narrow. You weren't talking about this development, were you?
No, I was talking about access to the development for emergency vehicles.
Okay.
If they were to use that, that exit that goes onto land.
Yeah, any new roads that would be put in would...
Any speech has to be given here so that it can be recorded, so if you have...
But the public hearing's also been closed at this point, Ms. Geezy, so I'm not sure that we appropriate to ask the public questions.
Okay.
And the public input has been closed.
Sorry. Anyway, there are provisions to take care of some of the animals. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dory, but when they put in streets, the emergency vehicles have to okay what the turn radius is and all those things.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, with the lady who questioned where people are gonna park for the trails, this project is not designed for you to drive to the project and park your car and walk the trails. It's designed for the neighborhood people to walk into this project on the trails.
Ms. Kitchen,
It's not designed for parking.
And I don't mean, but that, it is for public trails. It
Yes,
is,
I
and
know
we will
it's
talk
for
about code,
public,
but not
but
just
it's
for the
not-
residents also, but for the.
But it's not designed to put a parking area in for the public to walk the trails.
It could. It could be a concern, and
don't-
I mean, it is a thought, and it is.
It's not on this plan, though.
It could be on Shakespeare Street, which will be dedicated to the public. There could be a parking area near the entrance that would allow bike racks or.
There
some
could
cars
be,
there.
but it's not on this plan.
Not in the conceptual yet, because this is, again, a very broad plan. But some of those details can be worked out for the preliminary plat.
But I do I do agree with you on the concerns of the one-way streets, because those streets are terrible. And I know that for a fact. Even Laconia's little one-way section is a nightmare. I worked for the city for 30 years in the Public Works Department, so I know those streets are terrible. But they can still discuss with the staff different ingress and egresses for this project with regards to that one-way section, taking into consideration all of your comments. We have to make a recommendation to City Council. City Council ultimately makes the final decision, so you need to go to that hearing and speak up at that one as well. Development is going to happen whether you like it or not. This land has been in our city forever, as long as I've been here, and I've been here since 1984. It's just now being developed, and it's going to take 3-4 years before you even see the first house go up out there. By that time, 510 is going to be widened for sure, and it's not going to affect additional traffic at that point because it'll be widened into 4 lanes. As far as that goes, I think it's a great development. We don't have a lot of developments with cluster housing. It's something new in Sebastian. And I'll be curious to see how it actually is going to turn out. And I'm in favor of it, but I also want to make sure that the staff does take a look at the safety issues on the one-way streets.
Okay, I agree with a lot of what Ms. Kitchen has said, and the thing here, the key word is conceptual. And I guess the question goes to Dory, how much teeth will we have at the next stage?
So the Land Development Code requires that the preliminary plat it pretty much meets what you're seeing here in terms of design, density, things like that cannot change, or from the conceptual. But if there's an addition of some trail parking, if the drainage design is tweaked a little bit based on working with Sebastian River Improvement. And that's why we added a condition of approval that if it changes substantially, we'll bring it back before you, the conceptual. But the preliminary plat has to meet a lot of stuff that's here, but there's room for that tweaking and the massaging of some of the concerns or things that we feel added. Now, if City Council was to have what their final decision is regarding Shakespeare Street, we may have to look at the proposed conceptual of the east side of what you're seeing now if they determine that they don't want Shakespeare Street to be extended. So there may be a little tweaking and massaging of that area of the entrances. So, but the preliminary plat you look at it, without looking at those minute details, it should look like the same page with that. There's a little bit of wiggle room too for their dog park and their clubhouse track, and exactly where that's going to be, or the sizes. That's all going to be based on the drainage and utility design too.
Okay, so there is room to address the issues of what the people were concerned about. That's
Yes.
what I wanted to make sure of.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, Dory.
Good evening. I do have a question for the applicant, if I may, Dory, or if you. I'm interested in the thought process that went in behind extending Shakespeare from Periwinkle down into this subdivision. What was the thought process behind that?
I think that's probably a better question for staff.
Okay. Is Scott here?
Staff.
Oh, staff.
Yes, I can answer that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so our comp plan has goals and policies that request this, that leads into interconnectivity. It is a near future hearing we will have also on Cross Creek Lake Extension. They're adding some lots in there, so we're concerned that they only have access. We feel that the interconnectivity and having this other street down there is going to take off some of the traffic on Powerline or on Barber Street, Schuman. Those roads are even worse. Because of the one-way Shakespeare area that's going to remain one-way, we understand that that's the concern, that may become a thoroughfare. But there won't be, that's not going to be standard. The traffic that would that would use that two-way is gonna be that area of Sebastian Highlands. This new subdivision, I don't know why they would go north to get to Landfair, to go around to Periwinkle, to possibly go to the Barber Street Sports Complex, but most of their traveling will get down to 510. That's gonna take them quicker to the areas that they're gonna wanna go. So I don't see a lot of traffic that was, but it is some of our policies on our comp plan, and it's always good to have that interconnectivity to get traffic and residents from the local streets to collector and arterial roads. And so that was our thought process, and having this connect, so the public could use the trails. We're definitely are hearing the concerns, and that is the next step up to getting to the preliminary plat, is looking into the design and what's really needed for that area, but the interconnectivity. And this was also a requirement for that other property that annexed in, at council had also required that they give that 25 feet to deed that to the city to complete that extension down to. So it definitely, I'm sure, will be talked at city council to make that final decision, but we were going by our goals and policies in the comprehensive plan to get as much interconnectivity as we can to the collector and arterial streets.
Okay. It's just that when you go down Shakespeare, Shakespeare's one way, Lighthouse is one way, and then Ocean Breeze is one way to a certain point. I believe it's Landfair or whatever. And they do have almost like a little self-contained community within there, that there are no sidewalks. They don't have to, so they do have to use the roadways or the streets. And I love the concept of this development. I think that this is something new and bringing in the ideas of coming in about this, the fact of, having a self-contained with a dog park, everything. My concern is the gate entry on Shakespeare. Is that something that would be necessary because of the volume, or could it strictly be the 510 and that be like an emergency type entry at that point, or no, because of the design?
So if the concern is the extension of Shakespeare, again, we felt it was best, and we'll let, as we go through the process, have a decision by city council final. But I still think it's good planning to have not all your entrances on the same street.
Sure.
So I think we would still require that entrance off of Shakespeare, that they would at least then, it could have a different name at this point. If we're not going to extend Shakespeare, it could come up with a different name, but that entrance on that east side is just good planning for subdivision. And I think they had it too as a gate to go into the single-family area, and then there was an entrance on 512 that would be more into the cluster. Otherwise, you have you have your single-family lots to the north having to go through the cluster area to get to that single-family. So this offered another entrance into the single-family area. For traffic within their subdivision.
Well, we do have other subdivisions throughout the community that have those single entries, like the Laurels, Cross Creek, things like that, that they do have those single entries with emergency entrances only, but they have that one main entrance that still have a lot of home. I feel that this development is, it's going to be a great asset to the community, and I understand that people get a little concerned about growth, but I'm not in agreement with taking a small community of. And I understand they're Sebastian, I understand they're part of it, but taking that small Shakespeare Lighthouse, that whole area, and making it a part of this, because when you bring Shakespeare through, you're now connecting these two, regardless of whether you're really wanting to or not, you are connecting them. And I just see a lot of problems happening when this traffic comes in off of Periwinkle, because people are going to find the shortest route, the fastest way. If nobody's watching, this is what we're gonna do. And my concern is that connection. I think that we can have this beautiful community and the accesses be from 510 and to join this.
Please, we don't do that here.
I was just going to clarify.
Okay.
I was just going to clarify that the any gating that's part of our project is only going into the traditional single family. That the two entrances we do have are open, non-gated, and so there shouldn't, it's not probably part of that conversation of the Shakespeare extension, or the gating part.
And I know that we're moving forward. We have other things to come along, other things that would be considered as this goes through the chain. But sometimes when we get caught up in something, some things don't change, and I don't want to see. I think this is I really like the concept, And I'm excited about this, the cluster housing and, you know, with having the rules that go with it so that we can, you know, have the different things. And I'm excited about the growth and the way that it's doing. I just don't, I'm concerned about that connection. I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, it might, I don't know at this point. And I'm not, of course, an engineer, so I'm just, but these are my concerns.
And from our point, we will do the will of the city.
Where is your, while you're up here, where is your emergency exit? The one that's going to be completely closed for just first responders?
That's way up in the northwest part.
Off the
It's
land
in
fair?
between, and it's not notable, it's not gonna be paved. It goes on to, what is that road
It's
up
off
there?
Land Fair, I see it, okay.
Land Fair, I believe.
Land Fair.
Yes, it is Land Fair.
And so it would be, and that would probably be gated with a lockbox, so only emergency vehicles. So it's not, it would not have but one time every 5 years. I mean,
Yeah,
a
I
hurricane
understand.
comes and there are trees down, and the only way to get into somebody is be that way. You know, that's the kind of thing that's meant for. It's just an extra safety precaution.
I just am really concerned about the Shakespeare connection. And two, you're opening public trails. You're opening trails to the public that you haven't even designated or designed parking for. Now are we going to throw parking on the side of Shakespeare and, you know, through this? And again, we're, you know, and I think that growth is inevitable. It's going to happen whether we're involved or not. And I do believe that we need to, you know, pay attention to everyone involved in this and listen to this. So I'm really, again, I'm concerned about the Shakespeare connection, and I understand that things are going to happen.
We hear you, okay?
Okay, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Hatter?
So Dory, quick question. In the considerations, a 3 to 4 foot high fence will be required. Would the developer be responsible for that fence?
Yes.
Excellent, okay. And then I think for us as a board to consider, I will coattail Mrs. Matthews here about the being questionable of extending Shakespeare, only with the thoughts of is, you know, I'll be our own devil's advocate, is the city ready and prepared for the infrastructure that would be necessary to make the rest of the roads accommodate the potential traffic? And that's, and I don't know that we're aware of that, or that it's not part of this, I understand, but I think it's got to be considered.
And I apologize, what would not be considered? So these are improvements that the developer would do.
They're improvements that the developer would do at the request of this committee, this commission, on behalf of the staff's recommendation, or as putting it as a consideration. But we're doing that on the idea of allowing that to become a thoroughfare, potentially traveling south. Are we prepared to widen Shakespeare from the 8 foot to make it 20 foot? Is it going to have sidewalk? There will have to be additional infrastructure done at some point if all of that was to transpose. I understand we're not visiting that, but I think it's something that has to be considered at this stage.
So the intent is the northern 720 feet that goes along their property, that there would be a design that would be reviewed by the city engineer. It's not going to be the final design with curb and gutter and a sidewalk, but it will be, it may have a sidewalk, but it's because when we get the other 25 feet from the property next to it, then there would be that final design. That developer will have to do that. So there isn't, to get that street extension, these would be from off-site improvements from developers with property dedicated to the city. So in terms of the cost to the city, it's not going to cost anything. But there's going to be a final design of that will meet what our land development code requires, the width of the asphalt pavement, a sidewalk, whether it's on both sides or one side. So that would be done. It's the connecting it to the one-way part so that we make it safe for everybody. But, and that intersection at Land Fair there, that's where it'd go back to the two-way. But it is all doable in the long term when the last piece of the puzzle is that one vacant property that just was annexed in last year. That's when it would be a complete street with the complete design. We're certainly not going to just put in pavement to get a connection and not make it safe. It's going to have the correct striping. It's going to have the correct signage. This road is not for the developments, it's because of the developments that we're able to extend the road. And again, interconnectivity, we always feel is a good thing. This is what will be discussed, your recommendation to City Council and City Council's final decision.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And what I was referencing is that additional infrastructure. I understand that the lot to the east would have to be that developer's responsible for that 25 feet. But versus creating a thoroughfare, can we make a recommendation versus a thoroughfare, maybe that it becomes a parking area and that the developer looks at their block 17 in that last lot
So
and
I'm
says
gonna-
that's a parking lot versus a home site?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of nervous with the word thoroughfare, because it's not gonna be a thoroughfare, it's gonna be a local street. It's 50 feet. Now,
It will
with the
become a thoroughfare to move south. I mean, if I was in that area and that's the easiest way to get there, I'm going. I'm gonna be very candid. I mean, everybody else will use it as that.
Mhm. The intent is not to be a thoroughfare, so there could be some good street design that's going to prevent that. But that's what the study will be for when we get to that, and, if it's decided to be extended. But we've got to have safe entrances and access from all of our subdivisions, and Sebastian Highlands 17s, and Cross Creek Lake Estates, and this subdivision. So the subdivision that's next to us, I don't think they have any access. Their only access would be through a Shakespeare Street extension. They are not going to be accessing to the north to Cross Creek Lake Estates. They have no access down to 510. It's through this, and they've given the dedication. So when that comes in, this is going to be their access. So there's a lot of future parts that we have to look at. But again, this is part of the process, and this is the conceptual. You certainly can, through your recommendation, let City Council know how you feel about this extension, and they'll consider that too.
I understand. You did present it to us with the illustration of the overhead that it would be opening up to allow all that traffic to flow. And
Yes.
if I was to live on one of those streets, I'm not sure that I would be prepared to see all that traffic either. And that's where I want to be my own devil's advocate. And do we say instead of C, that it is the extension of that 720 linear feet at 25 foot wide, can it be a parking area that actually has the access to get to those trails? Now, is it going to be convenient that everybody wants to go around there? Do you want to use the trail or do you not want to use the trail? That's ultimately the
These
end
are
of the day.
recommended conditions, so certainly
Understood.
after your discussion, you want to change those.
But that's why I said that was for this
definitely
board.
allowable.
I just had the question. And then the last thing that I would want to consider for this board is that all of the oaks and the sables that are on this property, we should make that as a condition that they're saved, that they need to be moved as part of their infrastructure, but they should not be destroyed. I understand it costs money. It's part of our nature, and it's part of what we do as the city of Sebastian.
There was the plan that definitely showed the trees that were going to be saved in that northern area, that northern buffer and along there. But yes, they're not able to get to some of those southern areas or in the areas where the wetlands are, because the pepper trees are very thick in there. At this time, we don't allow a lot of land clearing except for some grubbing. But yes, certainly with the preliminary plat, each of those phases will have to have a very detailed tree survey, show us with where the infrastructure is going to be and why that tree would have to be. Is your question that you would make a recommendation that it has to be relocated versus, which not all trees can be relocated, but to save as many trees as they can?
Oaks and sables. Yes. Yeah, oaks and sables, native trees.
Just keep in mind, there are some Florida statute limitations on some of that, and we'd have to keep in mind those for the future as well. We
Yep.
just can't violate those.
Yep, understood.
Thank you.
Ms. Babs?
Yes.
All right, can you hear me? All right. Okay, I got some questions for the applicant. Okay, so I guess my first question is, how are the cluster housing going to be serviced when it comes to trash? What is the thought process there? Are they going to have individual, trash cans, or is there going to be like a common area for trash pickup?
It's funny, because I'm thinking about, we've gone through those reiterations, and I'm not quite sure where we're at, but it would involve the conversation with Waste Management, who services.
Okay.
And we have looked at it. It could be a common dumpster, or it can be just trash cans pulled out, because it is very doable to go through the cul-de-sac to pick up garbage. But
So
that
that
has
was-
not been decided yet.
Okay, because that was my question. I just wanted to confirm if fire trucks and trash trucks have been routed through these.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And we made changes, and we made everyone happy.
They look really tight.
Yep.
But.
Okay. It has been looked at and blessed.
Okay. My next question is, so I see, are you, I guess, planning to have the minimum lot size be 54 by 60? Is that what I'm
On
seeing?
the cluster houses, I
Yeah.
think that's the smallest one.
Okay. Okay. Who is, are all the roads going to be private roads? I'm assuming in the development, right? They're all going to be private?
I think that was a condition. I know it has to be when it's gated, so the single family, traditional. Are you?
Any of the Shakespeare will be dedicated to the city. The maintenance part, if there is roads that aren't gated through the cluster, they will be maintained by the HOA. The city is not going to, it's not recommended that we're going to dedicate those roads to the city, just the Shakespeare extension if needed. But the roads by the cluster housing would be under maintenance of an HOA.
Okay, so all the roads on the property would be private, maintained by the HOA?
Yes.
Okay. What about the public trails? Who's going to maintain the public trails? Or is that going to be the HOA as well?
That's part of our public benefit, yes.
Okay, in perpetuity? Okay. Dory, is that noted somewhere, or is that?
That would be clarified in their HOA documents, but the final plat. So the trail tracks, the wetland buffers would be a track dedicated to the HOA for maintenance, but allowed for public use.
Okay, so
And we
not
also,
necessarily
similar to-
something that we need to make sure we document here during this approval?
No, we would
Okay.
get that during the final plat.
Okay. So I thought the question about the public parking for the amenities was a good one. Is that something that you guys have considered or thought about?
We had not particularly thought about it. We saw it more as a part of a whole system, connectivity. There's just to the west of us is a whole area under conservation and preservation. We just had not gotten to that level, but we saw you were walking through and coming through.
Okay. I mean, just as a resident myself and seeing all these trails, I think it's great. It's a great plan. I would potentially like to come to them, but I would have to drive because I live very far. So I like the idea of having public parking. So I would probably want to consider that as one of the conditions. Let me see, what other questions do I have? Oh, do you have your traffic engineer here? I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about traffic. I got some questions. If you have your traffic engineer here. No? Okay. Okay, I guess my question would be, and I don't know, maybe Jim could answer, but it appears that all of the traffic generated, and in the report, it shows 52% from coming, I guess that would be westbound on County Road 510, and 48% from, coming east, in the east direction. I guess, was this done before the request from the city to provide that link? Is that why there was no traffic generated from that direction?
Initially, we never counted on that traffic. So because that was our initial intent, that maybe it would be connected. We would definitely give you the right of way, so that could be something that
Because I
has
guess
to be
my question would be, I
studied
really want to know what % of the traffic generated from your property would, would be
north?
coming from that direction. Everybody's talking about, you know, this, but I don't see it in the report as to how much it would be.
So how much outside traffic would be impact from our project being built and connecting the road?
Well, I think there's two questions. There's the one question would be, how many trips are generated from your project that would be coming from the north? So that would be one question. And then the second question would be, how many background trips would there be of traffic that from the Highlands area that would be making that pass through? I think that.
Sarah, I'll
Yeah.
attempt to answer the question. I think the generation is difficult because when you put it in a model, clearly there's no generator. There's no reason for the residents to go to the north, right? There's no shopping. There's, you know, they'd have to snake through all the network of roads to get to jobs and everything else. So I don't think it would show that they're going to the north. But as the residents are saying, that's a different situation, saying, well, if there's traffic congestion in other areas, and this is now a shortcut to go through it, we'd have to talk to Susan O'Rourke, the traffic engineer, and see if there's a way to model that. But the way it typically is done is the generation of the homes goes to residents, I mean, goes to jobs, goes to retail establishments, and everything's off of 510, so it would all generate to 510.
Yeah.
So
My
not to say we couldn't look
my
at that.
thought would be it'd be very low generated from it, but not zero, I guess is what I'm, and I think my hunch, and Dory kind of shook her head yes, is that this was probably done before the request was made to link it, and that's why there was no traffic generated from the north. I would think there would be some trips, you know, PM peak hour trips or something, you know, right, of people making that.
I think
that
also too
cut.
is, as our traffic analysis are required for them to address the traffic that's going to come from their project.
Yes.
And so, because there is no street extension yet, it's going to be hard to include part of that traffic study to see what is going to come from the Highlands. And I'm not sure what the county has on any traffic trips we have in the Highlands for them to add into a traffic study. But the land development code requires to see what impact their residents would have on the local roads. So what we have to add into the picture is how much traffic from the Highlands, existing Highlands, would be added onto this road, which might not be fully identified in a traffic study or required by them because it's not their traffic.
Yeah. I mean, they would only be, you know, you could only discuss, you know, on their project what their trips generate, not necessarily the additional trips, you know. And from what I hear, Dory, it's really a city's request for that interconnectivity, which I think is good. I mean, from a citywide perspective, I know the local residents here are against the interconnectivity, but as a whole, I mean, it's good for traffic to interconnect roads. I mean, I hear the concern, but I do think that we should have an accurate traffic study that reflects how many trips would actually be coming from the north. There would be some, not zero, but anyways.
Sure, it's Jim Bitter, B-I-T-T-E-R.
Thank you.
And Jim is our civil engineer, as I think Sarah obviously knows.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have an answer to Mr. Carter's question.
I'm sorry.
Would you consider us answering Mr. Carter's original question? I could bring the developer's representative up.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Carter, didn't want to think we were avoiding your question. I think it's important to note that the homes are designed to be very efficiently sized, so they're much smaller than most new development. Homes ranging from 1,200 square feet to 2,000 square feet, including the garage. So as a price point on a monthly basis, it's going to be lower than your typical large home in Sebastian, I would argue. But on a price per square foot, it'll be higher. So again, it's really hard to predict in 4 years what the prices will be, but I think in Sebastian today, homes are renting anywhere between $1,500 a month to $3,500 a month. I don't know where we will fall in that range. Obviously, for the developer and the owner, they hope that it's higher, but we don't know at this time. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and I saved myself for last. Just the way I am. I do have a couple of comments. First of all, I've had experience with cluster housing before in other communities, and they work. It's an excellent product for people in a lot of different stages of their lives. The first-time homeowner, the couple, young people, people with small families, old people like me who love to be surrounded by greenery, but I'm tired of paying everybody else to take care of it. It serves a good purpose, and will allow some people to live in our lovely community who perhaps could not because of their own physical limitations at some point in time. I also, oddly enough, somebody gave me a photograph today that was taken in 1978, and sorry I can't show it to you all from here, but it's a large sign advertising the city of Sebastian, home of America's first wildlife refuge, absolutely true, Pelican Island. 1,600 friendly people and 6 old grouches. And the reason I think this is appropriate is because nobody likes change, and I'm pretty sure that those 1,600 people didn't want me here and probably didn't want any of us here, because that was a long time ago. And change is always uncomfortable for some of us, but it is inevitable. Otherwise, we'd all still be riding horses. I would very much like to see included in our recommendation a condition that would provide guest parking, a guest parking area, because I like the idea of no cars parked in the driveways and just parked in the garage, but my gosh, what happens when you have company? Where do they park? We have to have some kind of guest parking for things.
We have addressed that in one of the cluster houses. In addition, there's on-street parking near the amenity center, and all the roads are set up. It's going to be the valley curb condition on the road edge. There's plenty of room to pull off onto the grass.
In the cluster housing area?
In the cluster housing area.
Because that's where I'm concerned about it. That's where I'm concerned about it most, because I've been in places where it's just...
Wait, I didn't really hear you there, sorry.
It's just, my concern was to service the cluster homes so that when those folks have a guest, there's some place for their guests to park other than...
There's the equivalent of about 1 parking space per unit additional parking that's in the court. Within the court, and then there's an additional plenty of room across the street from each of the clusters where cars could park.
Okay.
But it's not paved, but it, you know.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And I have one more. Overall, this planned unit development meets all of the criteria that is required, and fits within what our comp plan says we want for our city. A diversity of housing with connectivity to other neighborhoods. And I know some of the folks on Shakespeare are less happy about connectivity than some of the rest of us might be. Dory, can you perhaps tell me, and I might be very wrong, but was not Shakespeare planned to be a two-way street isn't that what it shows on the plans?
When Cross Creek Lake Estate developer came in, They were going to give the 25 feet that was required to make that a two-way street. There were people that came to the city council meeting. It was decided at that point to keep Shakespeare one way at that point. So there was, in the past, we had an opportunity to make it a two-way street, but it remains one way. And so at this time, there's the berm, and I'm not sure if the gentleman previously was speaking of the berm, he was talking that berm of Cross Creek Lake Estates, I'm not sure. But there's no intention to take that berm down or that area to create two-way.
Okay. I just when I listen to people, I understand that everybody likes the nice, quiet little neighborhood, but it seems that a number of people are very concerned with garbage trucks and moving trucks and the Amazon trucks and people who don't belong in the neighborhood parking their cars every which way, and some people who do live there going the wrong way on a one-way street. And I'm thinking, to me, it is logical that a bigger street would be a safer street. And I know you disagree with me, but I don't understand how you can have it both ways. And that's just me personally.
So-
We don't have to answer that question.
Yes, and it wouldn't be part of this project, but there is 25 feet of right-of-way. I think I heard a resident state that there's 8 feet of pavement, which that is a substandard street. It should be 11 to 12 feet. And there is room, but it's what the city may have to do to, if we widen the street, then adjust the swales and the driveway piping. And so it's not as just as easy as saying, well, we'll just add some additional pavement to make it a safer street. But again, that would be up to the city, or depending if the next developer that comes in, I'm not sure, but, you know, there are ways to make that a safer street and possibly an area for the trucks to not take up the whole road when they stop. But again, not part of the consideration for approving this conceptual plan, but definitely things that have to be looked at. If the decision is to, yes, extend Shakespeare, then the whole street itself will be looked at and studied and look at for safe design. If city council comes back and says they agree or don't want Shakespeare, then that part of of this development, that part won't need to be looked at.
That helps me understand it a little bit better, because I recognize there is currently a safety issue there.
But it's a substandard street, as it is.
It's like, it really should be addressed one way or the other at some point in time. And I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know these things. If we are finished with our deliberation, then I would entertain a motion.
Can I make a motion? Okay. My motion is to recommend approval with the staff recommendations, along with 3 additional. One being to add public parking for the public amenities. One being, I know, Dory, you said not to document it, but I think additional, adding that the owner is required to maintain public amenities in perpetuity. And then also the third being to add some sort of traffic calming devices along Shakespeare, the section that they would be constructing.
I'm sorry, will you repeat that, because it was a little bit fuzzy for me, the 3 that you added?
The 3?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one being
The public park, heard that
to
one.
add public parking for the public amenities. The second one being that the owner would be required to maintain the public amenities in perpetuity. And then the third being request that they add traffic calming devices along Shakespeare to limit the cut-through traffic.
So, okay. Just a second, all right, sorry. The is the developer amenable to that? 'Cause, I mean, 1 and 2, I don't have a problem with, we just need to check with the developer on number 3.
We can't hear.
My mic's not on? Okay, no issues with adding 1 and 2. 3, is the developer have any issues with respect to that consent on the traffic calming measures on Shakespeare? Does that present any problems?
I think maybe, Sarah, to clarify, where are you proposing the traffic calming
Yes.
measures?
The area that they would be constructing. So on the section, the section between the gates, or their access, and I think it would be land fair.
The
So that
750
section
feet.
there, that would be what the city had requested to provide the interconnectivity.
So within their property on there, okay.
It sounds like it's off property too?
No,
No, it would
it's on that north
that's what-
720
Okay,
feet.
just the 720 feet.
That's
Okay.
what I wanted to clarify.
We will do the will of the city.
Thank you for clarifying that. If you guys can please speak into the mic on the board, I'm sorry.
Can we add about the preservation of the trees? I mean, I'm asking the board as a consideration.
I'm very sorry, but I can't hear you clearly.
As a consideration to what Ms. Battles just suggested, can we add the preservation of the trees, the current oaks and the sables?
Preservation
Of the trees.
Are you, Dennis, are you saying in addition to what's required by code? Like, you're saying over and above?
Here's the thing, does the code say that they can remove oak trees and sables?
Yes, but they have to be replaced with, if you remove a protected or specimen tree, you have to replace them. So similar to what she showed you the slides though, with the preliminary plat, we're going to have a landscape plan for that subdivision.
Okay.
Where they will calculate, we're providing this many trees will have to be removed because it's in the middle of the road, or it's where the lift station has to go or something. So there's going to be trees that they're going to have to take out for construction. But they're going to have a landscape plan that's going to have some calculations and give you those details of how many are removed and how many are being replaced.
Okay, that's
In
fair.
addition to the new trees that it's going to be planting also.
Of course, yeah, okay.
Can you give it to me all together?
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to recommend approval with all of staff's recommendations, or staff, A through E, the conditions they recommended, as well as 3 additional, 1 being that public parking is provided for public amenities, 2 being that the owner is required to maintain public amenities in perpetuity, and 3 being that traffic calming devices are placed on Shakespeare between their access and the intersection at Landfair to limit the amount of traffic that would be using it as a cut-through.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Call for a vote, please.
And this is, to clarify, this is a recommendation to City Council.
Ms. Kitchen?
Yes.
Ms. Battles?
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Matthews?
No.
Mr. Haddix?
You can be
No.
removed.
Ms. LaRusso?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
We have 5 yeas and 2 nays, so the motion carries.
Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
I close out just again for the public that this is a recommendation to City Council. And tentatively, we have the meeting scheduled for September 13th. And if you received, it's a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. If you received a letter today, you will also receive a letter regarding that meeting also for that. September 13th.
Okay. We have no unfinished business? No additional new business?
Just new business, real quick. We set by you, there's a one-page comprehensive plan addition. That was the policy that came out of the annexation agreement for the Graves Brothers, that we were required to put a lot of the developers' agreements into a site-specific into our comprehensive plan. So that's just a sheet that needs to go into the comprehensive plan book that you have. If you can find that sheet, it's just a new policy that was approved by the state and through our process.
Okay, great.
If you're gonna,
Our meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you very much.